Um, Here's a fun one. So I was invited to come into a facility to demonstrate acoustic lubrication or ultrasonic assisted lubrication to a company that were looking at ways to improve their lubrication program. And um, we set up some measurements in the software, and they asked us to go out and grease a couple of bearings. So this one particular bearing we went out to, and when I started listening, this is what I was hearing. So as you can quite clearly hear, there is impacting going on there. We can see it in the waveform. But, my first exposure to this bearing was that crackling and popping, that sound of impacting that was happening in the bearing. So we gave this a couple of shots of grease. We weren't able to reduce the friction. In fact, the friction went up a little bit. So the decibels went up a little bit. So that was our indicator to not put any more grease in. But what we did was we went back into the office and we gathered some more information about this particular asset. So they were able to provide me with the fact that it had an NTN 6816 bearing within here. And in looking at the spectrum, I could clearly see that there was repetitive harmonic impacting in the spectrum. And this particular bearing was rotating at 76 RPM. So we overlaid the fault frequencies for the inner race, outer race cage for this bearing, and we could see that our BPFO or our ball pass outer race frequencies were lining up perfectly with the repetitive impacting that we were seeing coming from this bearing. So we are able with ultrasound to identify bearing faults just like we can with vibration. Same principle. We're collecting that dynamic signal. We're overlaying the specific information related to the physical characteristics of the bearing and able to see that repetitive impacting at the outer race of my bearing. So that was, extremely valuable knowledge to the customer. They were able to identify that they had a problem with this bearing. So through the process of lubricating this bearing, we're bringing early evidence of a defect or a problem with this bearing.